Welcome to Fresh Outlook. I'm Mia Toski. We have a great show for you this week. We're going to first take a look at the news from overseas. Tens of thousands of people are now protesting in the streets of Egypt, demanding that President Mohamed Morsi be put back in power. And then it's being called the trial of the century. 6 women are now deciding the fate of George Zimmerman in Sanford, Florida. The Neighborhood Watch volunteer is on trial in the shooting death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. And he's back. After falling off the political stage 5 years ago after a prostitution scandal, former New York Governor Eliot Spitzer secures enough signatures to enter the Democratic primary and run for controller. So a very busy week. Let's get right to it and take a look at the latest news from Egypt.
Egypt's military-led interim government laid out an accelerated 6-month timetable for a return to civilian democracy. Interim President Adli Mansour named a prominent economist, Hazem El-Beblawi, as prime minister and appointed pro-democracy leader Mohamed El-Baradei as a vice president. Under the plan, 2 panels will be appointed to make amendments to the constitution passed under Morsi's government. Those changes will be put to a referendum within about 4.5 months. Parliamentary elections will be held within 2 months after that, and once the new parliament convenes, it will have a week to set a date for a presidential election. But pro-Morsi supporters have rejected the plan, contending that Morsi was removed by a coup.
Constitutional declarations are made by representatives of the people or elected officials. None of these appointed officials have any right to issue any constitutional declaration. There's no legal or constitutional basis for that. It's revocable both internationally and locally. It has no basis to stand even in a court.
The constitutional declaration announced by Mansour coincided with the nation's deadliest day since Morsi's July 3rd ouster, which killed 51 protesters and wounded 435. The killings further entrenched the battle lines between supporters and opponents of Morsi.
And to discuss more about the news from Egypt, let's introduce our first panel here on Fresh Outlook this week. We are joined by Didi Benki, Dr. Dalia Fahmy, a political science professor from Long Island University, and we're also going to be joined by Abdel Iskander. He's a Middle East analyst live from D.C., and we're going to get to him right away. Ladies, I want to first thank you for being here on Fresh Outlook, and I want to talk about one of the things that we keep hearing about. Is this a revolution or is this a coup? And does the definition really make a difference? And Didi, I'll start with you on this.
Oh, it's a coup. I mean, a coup is a coup is a coup. I mean, because, this guy was voted on fairly and squarely. Maybe he's not doing a good job. Maybe there are problems. But you know what? If you get elected, you get elected. In the United States now, we need to pull our support and our aid because it's a coup. In fact, it's the United States law to do that. So, yeah, I mean, when someone's elected fairly and squarely, a military coup is not the right way to go.
Dr. Fahmy, if you could explain to me why it actually does make a difference for the folks that are watching, why does it make a difference that we make that distinction between revolution and coup?
Well, the reason why it's really important because in the United States, if a democratically elected president is deposed by the military and it's called a coup, we must withdraw all aid. Egypt receives $1.3 billion in military aid from the United States every single year. If we acknowledge this as a coup and call it as such, we have to withdraw all of that aid. So far, we have not. We have actually applauded the interim government and said, please speed up the transition. But what we have to understand is that on July 3rd, the military deposed a democratically elected leader, shut down much of the independent media that was covering him, arrested him and much of his opposite of the party he represented, and started to curtail his government.
Now, we heard from Didi. Didi's calling it a coup. Are you calling it a coup?
It's absolutely a coup.
And if we move forward and we look at what's happened in Egypt historically in just the last 2 years, 2 leaders have been ousted. Where do we go from here? I mean, it's such a broad question, but what happens next? Didi, I know it's a very open question, but what do you think is going to happen next? We've just seen 10 days of bloodshed.
Yes, it's very unfortunate, and for it to escalate in Egypt, that's bad for the whole world, obviously. And as far as the United States goes, it would be good if we could spend money on elections and on trying to restore the peace, meaning trying to bring the groups together, because the worst thing that can happen is to leave out the Muslim Brotherhood. You cannot do that. all groups have to be part of it, and that's always difficult after something happens like this. So that's what I'd like to see the United States role, but the aid has got to be pulled as far as the money.
And what about the people who do support Morsi? They don't see this as a coup.
Well, but it is, and you know, that's the problem. I mean, to try to keep it from escalating, and if you can find some level-headed folks in both camps to bring them together, I mean, that's just what has to happen.
Well, Dr. Fahmy, let me ask you a question about this. I've actually got two. Why is this such a blow to democracy? And you were explaining that to me before, but why is this such a blow to Egypt's democracy?
Democracy is not simply an output. It's not just an election and the resultant who comes into power. Democracy is a process. And so very quickly after the election of President Morsi, what was supposed to happen was the fortification of democratic institutions. Right after the ouster of Hosni Mubarak, we had 2 years of several elections. We had a presidential election and a runoff, and then the second election. We had a vote on a referendum and parliamentary elections. We saw Egyptians amassing in the street, lining up peacefully to voice their vote. The fact that they are now today seeing in the street that their vote did not result in a concrete output means that the institutions of democracy and the confidence of democracy has been defeated. And that is the biggest blow to democracy.
We've actually seen some of those pictures the media has shown where they've got votes and it's just going right into the trash can. So they're actually protesting even that.
What we have to understand is that once people feel that they are not invested in the institutions of democracy, they won't go back and vote again. And that will be the biggest tragedy, because that is what leads back to a regime of authoritarianism, because people will see themselves as removed from the process.
Is there anybody right now in Egypt that is happy with this? I mean, and if you can also explain a little bit about the financial instability of the country that may be leading to the ouster of both these presidents.
Well, the 1 year that Morsi has been in power, we did see economic decline. We saw the currency devalued. So it has been a difficult year, and it really has hurt most of the Egyptian people right in their pocket, which is where it matters. However, what are the options that they're facing with today? They're seeing that the old institutions are returning. You're seeing the military, which has control over 40% of the economy, is getting stronger. What you're seeing is a kind of return to the old regime and not so much the path to a consolidated democracy that they were so hopeful for 2 years ago. The people that were very happy after Morsi was ousted on July 3rd are very quickly starting. The very Tamarut campaign is very quickly saying, wait, this is not what we wanted. So there are people who are quite happy. There are people who are becoming increasingly fearful of the direction Egypt is heading in.